Reyna Avilla Ramirez-Arellano is a character from the Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo, and in this video, I'll share and explain her life, from her childhood and to the events of the Heroes of Olympus. Obviously, there will be spoilers, so there's your warning. And with that, let's get into it. Reyna Ramirez-Arellano was born to a mortal named Julian Ramirez-Arellano and the Roman goddess of war Bellona. Reyna had an older sister named Hyla, and she lived with her father and sister for many years in Puerto Rico. Her father Julian was a soldier in Iraq, and Bellona fell in love with him. Julian loved Bellona so much that he wanted her to be his wife, which was impossible, because Bellona was a goddess and not a regular mortal like Julian. One night, Bellona visited Julian and gave him a glimpse of the future, and how Rome will never fall as long as Julian's bloodline remained. That was the last time Julian ever met Bellona, and he was never the same after that. He started suffering from PTSD from the war, and it drove him insane, and he started becoming paranoid and would often snap at his daughters. Through their father's madness, Hyla always defended Reyna, and the two were very close. Once when Reyna was 10, she and Hyla snuck out of the house, and when they arrived, Julian was furious that they left. He started throwing a fit, and was tossing furniture around, and one of them knocked Hyla out. Reyna thought Hyla was dead, and outraged, she charged at her father with a sword. Julian and Reyna had a fight, and it ended with Reyna stabbing him out of self-defense. Julian was vaporized, and it turns out that Julian's insanity drove him into being a mania, and not a human anymore, which is why he vaporized when Reyna killed him. Ghosts appeared around Reyna, and told her that she was a traitor, as patricide or killing your father was a grave sin among the Romans. Hyla woke up, and she and Reyna fled into the night. Eventually, Reyna and Hyla landed on Circe's island, and Reyna worked there as a makeup artist. And now, let's go to the Sea of Monsters, the second book in PJO where Reyna makes her first appearance. Reyna was present when demigods Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase entered Circe's island. Reyna did Annabeth's makeover, and later on in the book, Annabeth sets a pirate named Blackbeard free. Blackbeard and his men captured Reyna and Hyla as prisoners, and they suffered a lot while held captive. Over time as prisoners, they realized that they should toughen up to escape the place, and they learned that they were talented in combat, thanks to their mother being a war goddess. With this found knowledge, Reyna and Hyla became an unstoppable and feared duo, and they managed to escape. Reyna and Hyla then parted ways, with Reyna going to the Wolf House to be trained for Camp Jupiter, and Hyla soon became the leader of the Amazons. Eventually, Reyna finished her training with Lupa, and she entered Camp Jupiter. It's unknown as to what cohort Reyna was a part of, but we do know that she was immediately promoted to Praetor, despite not being Centurion previously. While in camp, she met a demigod son of Jupiter named Jason Grace, and became very close with him. Reyna eventually developed feelings for Jason, but Jason wasn't aware of this. When they were both Praetors, Reyna even saw a future with the two of them together, but this sadly didn't last. When they were both 14, they went to Charleston and encountered a ghost. Reyna followed the ghost on her own, and realized it was Venus, the goddess of love. Venus told her that no demigod will heal her heart, and that she would never find love where she wished, meaning her feelings for Jason would be pointless. Reyna didn't act the same after that, and some of the campers found out about her encounter with Venus. Because of this, rumors started to spread about her and Jason. Aside from this, Reyna had to deal with a demigod named Bryce Lawrence. Bryce was a psychopath who had killed a centurion, and Reyna wanted him punished. However, Bryce's family was the powerful one in their camp, and Bryce's punishment was just banishment from the Legion. And now, let's go to the events of the Last Olympian. Around this time, both Reyna and Jason were welcomed as heroes, as Jason had just defeated the Titan Krios, and they were praetors for a few months. Things were alright, when suddenly, Jason was kidnapped in the middle of the night by Hera. Hera placed him in the wilderness school with Piper and Leo, for a big plan for the Prophecy of Seven, and Reyna was the last person Jason saw before he disappeared. Once Jason was declared missing, Octavian, a Roman legacy of Apollo, started to campaign as the new male praetor, which annoyed Reyna. Soon enough, demigods Hazel Levesque and Nico D'Angelo joined the camp as well, and Reyna was a bit skeptical with Nico. Nico claimed to be Hazel's half-brother and an ambassador for Pluto, and Reyna eventually let them both in. Reyna also met another Roman demigod named Frank Zhang, and she let him join the camp. And now, let's head to the Lost Hero, the first book in the Heroes of Olympus. Reyna doesn't appear in this book, but she is remembered by Jason once he got his memories back. He mentioned her as his best friend, which made him question his feelings for Piper. Around this time, Reyna was being pestered by Octavian to hold a praetor election since Jason was missing for too long, and Reyna reluctantly agreed. And now, let's go to the Son of Neptune, where Reyna's first formal appearance occurred. After Juno declared Percy as the Son of Neptune, Reyna orders Hazel to bring Percy inside for interrogation. Reyna then talks with Percy one-on-one, and in their conversation, it's clear to Percy that Reyna had romantic feelings for Jason. Reyna also had a weird feeling that she already met him in the past, because she technically did in the Sea of Monsters. Later that day, Reyna declared Percy under probation, and a war game happens. Percy, Hazel, and Frank ultimately win, and suddenly, the Roman god of war, Mars, comes in. Mars announces a quest to free Thanatos, the god of death, and it was decided that Percy, Frank, and Hazel were going to do it. The next day, Reyna holds a Senate meeting to decide what they would bring for the quest, and while talking, Octavian says that they shouldn't bring anything, as he believed that it would be a suicide mission. Reyna objected to this, and tells Percy, Frank, and Hazel to use the Roman boat called Pax. Before leaving, Percy met with Reyna, who told him to seek out her sister Hyla in case they needed some help. Later on in the book, Hazel and Percy sent Reyna an iris message that told her that a giant named Polybotes was on his way to camp. When Polybotes arrived in the battle, Reyna fought hard while riding on her Pegasus named Scipio. The Amazons arrived as well for reinforcements, and they ultimately win the battle. Percy is made praetor, and Reyna congratulated him on the position. The next day, a meeting was held to discuss the Greeks from Camp Haplod, who were planning to go to Camp Jupiter. Octavian tells everyone that the Greeks were their enemies, and that they shouldn't come to their camp, and once again, Reyna objected to him. She announced that she allowed the Greeks to land, but to ready themselves in case it was a trap. And now, let's go to the Mark of Athena, the third book. Here, Reyna and the Seven discuss the events of the lost hero and the Son of Neptune, and the prophecy of Seven. From their conversation, Reyna learns of Jason's relationship with Piper Mclean, and even if she tried to hide it, it was clear that she was jealous. At one point, Reyna and Annabeth talked alone, and Reyna gave her a tour of New Rome. The two talked about Athena in her Roman and Greek versions, and Annabeth ends up mentioning her quest to find the Mark of Athena. Reyna remembers a demigod son of Athena who was finding the mark as well back in Circe's island, and she tells this to Annabeth. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the camp, and it turns out that a Greek demigod named Valdez was possessed by an Eidolon, and he had fired at Camp Jupiter. Reyna deduced that the Greeks betrayed them, which Annabeth argued that they did not. Reyna doesn't believe her though, and she runs to check on what happened. When the Seven escaped on the Argo II, Octavian started convincing the Romans that the Greeks were their enemies, and that they needed to attack Camp Haplod. Reyna tried to protest, but because it was clear that Leo fired at Camp Jupiter, Reyna couldn't go against Octavian's plans without being called delusional, so she had no choice but to stay silent. Because of this, the Romans started tracking the Seven down to bring them to the camp as prisoners, and at one point, they managed to find them. Reyna confronts Annabeth and tells them to surrender because if they don't, Octavian will gather allies to his side and attack Camp Haplod. Annabeth tells her that they could still unite the camps instead with the Athena Parthenos, but Reyna disagrees. At the end of the conversation, Reyna lets Annabeth escape, and she agreed to slow Octavian and the rest down. Despite this, Reyna told Annabeth that the next time they meet, they will be enemies on a battlefield. Reyna becomes pretty absent in this book, but we do see her with the Romans when they were still tracking down the Seven. They see Reyna through Piper's knife catoptries, with the Romans planning where to attack in Camp Haplod. And now, let's go to the House of Hades. We first see Reyna through a dream Annabeth had, while she and Percy were in Tartarus. In the dream, Athena tells Annabeth that Reyna should bring the Athena Parthenos to Camp Haplod, to unite the two camps and to stop the identity crisis of the gods. Reyna also comes up in a vision that Jason had. Jason feels guilty when thinking about Reyna, as he remembered how much she talks about their future together, and he pretty much stopped that from happening. A sailor named Grover Underwood and the Oracle Rachel there came to Reyna and Octavian in Camp Jupiter to talk about the conflicts between the camps. Rachel gives her a note that Annabeth managed to send through Tartarus that stated Annabeth's plan for Reyna to bring the Athena Parthenos to Camp Haplod to end the war between their camps. Reyna agrees to the plan and decides to follow the Argo II's route to get the Athena Parthenos. This journey was really risky, as the paths that the Argo II took were illegal and dangerous to travel, but Reyna didn't care. She told Octavian to call off the attack on Camp Haplod and left. Octavian didn't listen to Reyna and instead ordered the attack. Reyna encountered many obstacles and monsters in her journey to the Argo II, and her strength is shown here, as she managed to overcome them all on her own. Reyna eventually manages to reach the Seven after they closed the doors of death and got Percy and Annabeth back. The Seven witnessed Reyna cry over her Pegasus Scipio, who was slowly dying because of a monster attack. Reyna then kills Scipio to put it out of its misery, and she talks to the Seven. Percy and Annabeth tell Reyna of their journey in Tartarus, and Jason tells her that he gave Frank his praetorship. They then talked about Octavian attacking Camp Hapled, and they joked that they should load Octavian in a tank to blast him far away. Reyna agrees with the thought, and it was decided that she, along with Nico and Coach Hedge, should bring the Athena Parthenos to Camp Hapled. And now, let's go to the Blood of Olympus, the 5th book. In this book, Reyna, Nico, and Coach Hedge shadow travel to different places, and we open the book to them in Pompeii. Nico was weakened because of shadow traveling too much, and Reyna lends him his strength, which was a power Bellona had passed down to her. After sharing her strength, Reyna feels the emotional and physical pain Nico had inside of him, which made a sense of protectiveness rush through Reyna for Nico. Reyna and Nico bonded a lot in their journey, to the point that Reyna even saw him as her little brother. One night, Reyna had a dream of Camp Jupiter being destroyed, and it soon shifted to Octavian. Octavian had declared himself Pontifex Maximus, and he brought back the psychopath demigod Bryce Lawrence to their camp. Reyna soon wakes up, and she feels guilty about leaving the camp to Octavian. Reyna also reveals that she had a dream about a giant, and later that day, she started walking around Pompeii, thinking about Jason and the quest ahead of them. Nico soon woke up, and they talked about Reyna's dreams. Nico suggested talking to Thalia Grace, the lieutenant of the Hunters of Artemis and Jason's sister, for some info on the giant, when suddenly, Coach Hedge was possessed by Gaia. Earth and ghosts suddenly surrounded them, and a fight breaks out. Reyna had no choice but to knock out Coach Hedge, while Nico desperately used Diocletian's scepter to summon dead Romans to fight with them. This plan backfired though, because the Earth and ghosts were also Romans, and the dead Romans didn't want to fight their own people. Because of this, the scepter shattered, and Reyna was knocked down by a ghost. Reyna fought back though, and with the last bit of her strength, she ran to Nico, who shadow traveled them all out of there. Nico ended up transporting them to Portugal, and they rested for a bit before having dinner in a cafe. Nico explains his weird dreams as well, and tells them that the giant that Reyna saw in her dreams was named Aryan, a hunter who used to be Artemis' friend. Reyna was worried about Nico's condition, as Nico was using everything inside them for their journey, and when she expressed her concern, he was surprised. They were suddenly interrupted, however, because of Lycion, the first werewolf attacks them. A fight happens, and Nico manages to fatally stab Lycion and shadow travel them all out of there. They landed in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where Reyna was suddenly knocked out by an arrow. She wakes up tied to a chair with a sack on her head, but Reyna managed to set herself free once she got back to consciousness. It turns out that the Hunters of Artemis had kidnapped them, and Reyna attacked one of them. She pinned the hunter to the floor with a knife. Just then, the rest of the hunters arrived and told Reyna to stop, as there were 3 of them with just 1 of her. Reyna agreed and said, "You're right. Get another 6 of you in here and it might be a fair fight. I demand to see your lieutenant, Thalia Grace." Reyna's hostage suddenly started laughing and said, "Jason told me you were good. He didn't say how good." It turns out that the hunter Reyna attacked was Thalia, and Reyna met Hyla. Hyla reveals that she planned the kidnapping, as the location of the Amazons was top secret, and that Reyna shouldn't know about it. They then talked about Aryan, a giant who apparently fell in love with Artemis, but he got rejected. And now, Aryan worked for Gaia, and suddenly, the place was attacked by Aryan himself. Aryan shoots an explosive arrow that was set to explode in 4 minutes, and Reyna tries to slow Aryan down. Reyna accepted that she might die at that moment, and charged Aryan with a knife. She stabs him in the chest, but Aryan was still alive. She then jumped on him and wrapped her praetor robe around his neck. The robe was a powerful one that cut through Aryan and killed him. She meets with the rest and the ghosts surround Reyna. The ghosts called her a traitor, as Puerto Rico was the place where she lived and killed her father. Nico and the rest are confused, but Reyna didn't bother explaining. Instead, they fled to South Carolina, and Reyna was silent for days. Once they landed there, they rested a bit, and Nico brought up the ghost that called her a traitor from earlier. Reyna ends up telling him about her life, how she killed her father and her childhood in Puerto Rico. When she finished, Nico felt a bit awkward, and suddenly, he brought up a zombie chauffeur named Jules Albert that Hades gave him for a present. Just then, their conversation was suddenly interrupted by Bryce Lawrence. Bryce had overheard everything and said that he'd arrest Reyna for patricide. Reyna then got hurt by Bryce, and Nico got outraged. Darkness exploded from Nico, and the emotional pain that Reyna had sensed in him earlier exploded. With Nico's intense emotions, he had turned Bryce into a literal ghost and banished him from the world of the living. Through this outburst, all of Nico's darkest secrets spilled out in front of everyone, and made the Romans flee for their lives. Through this, Reyna learned that Nico was gay, and everything he went through after Bianca's death, which made Reyna understand him even more. Nico passed out, and when he woke up, they decided to go to Camp Haplet. They were accompanied by Pegasus, the god of horses, who told Reyna he was touched by her bond with Scipio, Reyna's Pegasus. They then met Dakota and other Romans like Michael Cahill, who were hesitant to arrest Reyna, but they had no choice because of Octavian's orders. Reyna and the rest ended up being saved by Ella and Tyson, and Reyna brought the Athena Parthenos to Camp Haplet. This united the two camps, and when Guy awoke, Reyna was present to command the Romans to the fight. After the battle, Reyna promoted Hazel to the Centurion position, and she told Percy and Annabeth that they were welcome to join New Rome College. Reyna meets with the Greeks at the campfire, and they decided that from then on, the Greeks and the Romans wouldn't be enemies anymore. Reyna then went to Nico and gave him a big hug in front of everyone, saying, "We had one home, and now we have two," referencing the two camps. By the end of the book, Piper and Reyna met, and Reyna asked Piper about what Venus told her all those years ago. Piper gets mad at her mother for what she told Reyna, and tells her not to mind it, and that Reyna was an incredible person. The two shook hands and became good friends ever since. And that's how the book ends for Reyna. Reyna's journey in the Riordanverse doesn't end here, so tune in for part 2 on the life of Reyna Ramirez-Arellano, where we'll go over what happens to her in the trials of Apollo. So how about you? What's your favorite Reyna moment? Let me know in the comments down below.